Today we are talking about stress on the Be Well Now podcast. And we figured, who gets more stressed? Who deals with more stressful situations than a police officer?
A plumber.
Obviously. For never showing up on time.
You ever seen how angry plumbers are when they're working on your sink?
Do they deal with ridiculous customers?
Oh, I'm sure. Can you imagine? Have you seen Cobra Kai?
Difficult to handle.
Every episode of Cobra Kai I've seen.
Yeah, so remember in the first season when he's like putting up the TV in the lady's house, she's like, I wanted it across from the door. And he like looks and he's like, there's a door across from the wall. And he's like, there is. She's like, no, from this door. How are you that stupid? Yeah, you deal with people like that all the time.
That's rough.
I just binge watched like 3 seasons last night.
I got COVID and watched every season. It inspired me to give up a really bad habit. I was like, if they can train, I can do this. So actually,
what was your bad habit?
I was vaping.
Vaping?
I've never admitted that before.
Wow.
Look at this. Taylor Byrd, the police officer, comes on, asks me the tough question.
Interrogating you.
Took my license and registration, and I feel like I have to be honest.
This is a level.
Everything's out on the table right now.
You are allowed to leave if you feel so inclined.
I'm watching Cobra Kai, and I'm like, if these guys can train this hard, and I throw the vape across the room, I'm like, I can do this too.
Dude, my favorite is Hawk. He's my favorite so far. Kid with the mohawk. He's pretty cool.
What made me sad was finishing it. Which there's a lesson about life in there, right? Get what you are seeking, and then where are you?
This is getting way
and then it ends. And
welcome to the Be Well Now podcast. Dr. Dummar, we're talking about stress today and what it does to the body.
Yeah, we're all really amped up about that issue too. So hopefully we have some good things to discuss.
I haven't podcasted in like 9 months.
I know. So you know what? You're gonna just jump right back
like
into it. And you're
so
gonna feel good.
normal, so abnormal at the same time. It's stressing me out.
Yeah. Well, you're going to do great. Don't worry about it. You'll be just fine.
Oh, okay.
Little boy.
We've been smiling.
Little boy. Wow. That kind of turned me on.
Okay.
Okay. Well, I'm good, man. This has been real.
All right. So should we get started?
I think Nick.
Oh my gosh. That was okay. I'm an idiot. I am officially an idiot. I don't know where that came from. Nick, the curious patient.
Nick, the curious patient, who has been called Matt all morning by Dr. Dummar. The whole energy in this room shifted when Taylor came. It's been fun.
It is. I make Ron very nervous.
Apparently.
There's a lot of smiles, a lot of laughs. What about stress made you want to do this podcast today?
Well, actually, the interesting thing about it is I had a patient yesterday, and we were reviewing his labs briefly, and I'm going to review them more, but he pulled them up on his phone, and this patient happened to be a police officer. And I looked at his labs, and I was like, oh my gosh, there's a crazy amount of stress on this system, and elevated cortisol, high triglycerides, like triglycerides through the roof. So many things happening, creatinine, kidney dysfunction. So I looked at that and I said, wow, I wonder how much stress police officers are under on a constant basis and how they manage that.
Did you ask him?
Well, we had a discussion about that, yes.
What did he say?
He's like, I'm under a little stress maybe. It's not bad.
That's it?
Yeah, but I think that's probably a typical response to kind of throw it off. Like, you want to have a serious, deep conversation.
So the life of law enforcement.
Yeah.
Most of us work 12s. Most of us work 10s.
Mm-hmm.
But a lot of us are, because of our numbers being so low, because no one wants to be a cop anymore, we have to fill more hours, so we're working 12-hour shifts, like minimum, which usually can turn into a 14, 15, 16-hour shift if shit goes awry.
So completely irregular sleep patterns.
So irregular sleep patterns, you're working 3 days on, 4 days off, 4 days on, 3 days off.
Incredibly hard on biorhythms.
Yeah. You add that sleep pattern in with, well, okay, we have to be at this point level at all times. We have to be at our best game. How do we do that?
Red Bull.
Yeah, Red Bull, as you saw me drinking this morning.
How many Red Bulls you drinking these days?
A day?
Yeah.
Or like just in general, I don't have a total number.
Because in my prime, I was drinking 3 Monsters a day, so I'm not that.
That was my
guy.
prime in high school. I was doing that a lot, like 2-3 hours of sleep. And then I didn't have a great high school life. We'll go listen to the True Health podcast and hear more about that. No, on duty, on shift, I'll usually drink about 1 or 2 Monsters or Red Bulls or something.
Just to stay alert, to feel
Just
like
stay
you can
up
stay
with
awake.
it. So I'm usually having about 600, 700 milligrams of caffeine a day.
Right. Yeah, and that takes your cortisol.
Not counting my pre-workout that I take after work.
You're
when I go
pumping
to the gym.
adrenaline into your body.
Yeah.
Without even having.
So I'm giving myself
a difficult
constant
situation.
uppers. And if you understand chemistry in the body, when you're giving you have a natural point of what do they call that? Your parasympathetic nervous system wants to stay at homeostasis.
Yeah, balance.
Yeah, balance. So when you are tired, you're going down, right? And you give yourself an upper, it's going to dramatically shoot it. But what your body does to that, it wants to naturally fight against that. So it's constantly pushing it down to where you get to a point where the body finally wins, to where it's pushing hard enough that you get a crash, right? And it drops you below homeostasis. And now you're in a downer point and you're trying to get back to homeostasis. But if you're constantly in that cycle of giving yourself uppers, you're just pushing deeper and deeper and deeper.
The body's
down.
trying to achieve balance.
Yeah,
Yes.
which is why a lot of these guys are giving the markers they have in their blood and end up killing themselves about 10 to 5 years after they retire.
Yeah, that's incredibly unfortunate and something that we really need to figure out how to prevent. And so the difficult thing is that I'm seeing.
It starts at home, Dr. Dummar.
Well, yeah, of course it was. Thank you. Isn't that a wise statement? The difficult thing that we're seeing, though, is when you do introduce these uppers, when you introduce these energy drinks on a very consistent basis, like Taylor is suggesting, you're essentially simulating a high-stakes response or a high-stakes intervention call without having the call, right? So you're attempting to. So your body's going to do a similar thing, but it's going to do it more naturally when you have to respond to an intense situation as an officer
at any given moment.
Yeah, and boom, without any sort of warning, all of a sudden you're having to determine how to disengage, or what do they say, to de-escalate a situation. Right.
And this is something that all first responders deal with. Firefighters a little less because they get to take naps and play Xbox all day while we have to go out on the road. I'm just kidding. I love firefighters. They're heroes. But people, especially people in the medical who work in the ER or who work in prior to surgery, anything like that, like it's just something. If we could predict when someone's going to go through a crisis and we need to be there, that'd be great.
Mm-hmm.
But
it would be great, yeah. And then you could do your 5 minutes of meditation beforehand.
I'd be like Batman in the new Batman movie where he just shoots the adrenaline right in his leg. It's like, hey, time to go.
Yeah.
And then you're set.
Right. Yeah, that would be really good.
Is there anxiety around not knowing when that's going to happen? Is this whole thing just a storm?
As a rookie, yes. You watch some of the older guys are kind of like stalled out. They're like, yeah, whatever. We've done this before. It depends on the call. The most anxiety you get, and this is true with everyone, is when you're sitting there, you're like typing your reports, blah, blah, blah. And you're sitting in your squat in your patrol car. And then you get a call I need 2 units for a domestic in progress at blah, blah, blah. They're telling you what's going on. That's when your adrenaline spikes. You're like, oh shit, you're thinking worst case scenario for your own survival. Or what am I going to run into that someone's potentially going to be hurt? Or at any call like that, or a theft in progress or whatever, you're spiked up and you're heading to that call and you're thinking about everything on the way to that call. It's kind of like the equivalent of when you're a teenager and you're going on your first date, right? And you're like, oh, I have no idea how this date's going to go. Or if you meet someone for the first time, you're anxious, you're ramped up.
Crazy
blah, blah.
butterflies,
Heart
beating faster.
Something that would be like a once a month or maybe once a year kind of feeling, you get about 12 times a day.
Right.
Yeah. And then you get to that call, say it is the worst case scenario, you're spiked up for the next few hours.
Yeah. So the ride down is another thing, right? The difficult, when you look at the physiology as well. So when you need to essentially run from the tiger, which we're talking about the autonomic nervous system here.
Chasing the dragon?
Regulation in the body of stress response.
Oh, I thought you were
right?
going to drugs.
No, we weren't quite
I was
there,
like,
but
Run from the Tiger. Is that a new one? I haven't heard that one yet.
you need to get that one.
Or
Yeah.
Chasing the Dragon, but
No, so I'm not aware of any of those.
Chasing
with
the
those
Dragon. So if
simple
anyone wants to know if your family members are doing drugs and you suspect it, if you see tinfoil lying around and you open that tinfoil and there's black lines, what they'll do is they'll heat up the heroin with a little bit of liquid, and they'll start taking it in. And as it's liquid, it starts to dissipate and move. So they have to move it down along the tinfoil so you see a black line from where the heroin was. It's called Chasing the Dragon.
Oh, my goodness.
So if you suspect a loved one who's maybe a user
Tinfoil.
or an addict, just look at tinfoil.
Tinfoil lines.
That's usually the most common thing that people forget to throw away.
So interesting.
News
So-
you can use, but also important.
Yeah. And then call local law enforcement and get them help.
So do you ever find that when these situations arise, as you're drawing down, again, that your capacity or your need to urinate or your ability to, say, pass a bowel is impaired?
Would I say mine is impaired?
I'm just asking. So at the beginning when we have an initial fight or flight response,
Right.
we can actually have loose stools, or we can have.
So I don't know necessarily, because I know enough about health that. What was that?
It was a dropped phone. I was so interested in what you had to say that everything.
There's a lot of
Shifted.
distractions today, and it's okay. This
Nick
is
is-
just how it's going to go today.
You know me very well. Nick is finding out how big of a smartass I am.
Yeah,
You could pick it up if you need to.
No, I'm
Matt's doing just
Matt
fine.
today.
Matt's doing just fine.
Matt doesn't need phones. Have you seen the episode in Seinfeld where there's the guy who just refers to himself as his own name?
In third person?
He's in the gym. Jimmy doesn't need this.
Oh yeah, I remember
Jimmy
that.
wants to ask you out, Elaine.
Yeah, Brooklyn Nine-Nine stole that with Terry.
Okay.
With Terry, what's his name? Is it Terry Crews? The big buff guy?
I know who you're talking
Yeah,
about.
he always refers to himself as Terry. He's like the sergeant of the precinct. He's like, Terry doesn't want his frozen yogurt today. Yeah, so I'm a little bit health conscious, so I know that drinking these large amounts of energy drinks and soda is super bad for your kidneys.
Mm-hmm.
So I drink an excess amount of water to try to help flush that and try to get my electrolytes through, just to try to balance that part.
Mm-hmm.
Not even thinking about my brain or anything like that, but just my kidneys in general. So I drink
Right.
a lot of water, so I take a lot of pee breaks
Yeah. Okay.
if I can.
Good.
Right. And I always try to use the fire station bathroom.
Yeah. Oh,
Not our
okay.
own.
Okay. Oh my goodness. I think that's hilarious.
Yeah, but
Taylor.
bowel and stool is definitely a little bit more wet, if
Yeah.
you will. I don't know how you describe
Loose.
poo-poo.
Mm-hmm. Formed.
But
not
loose,
formed.
loose is good, right? Loose is good to a point. You don't want it hard or rock, because then it's showing you're lacking.
Well, so often what happens is we have inability to actually move the stools. So
with high stress?
right. When
No, I'm the opposite. So when I'm super stressed, I have the squirts.
yeah. Okay. So that's usually that's like the initial, right? The oh man.
Let's get Taylor on the podcast, man.
So the initial is like running. Somebody says you scared me so bad I peed my pants.
Yeah,
right?
dude.
It's like you have the runs.
So I equate it. So I'm an athlete and I've competed a ton, right? And even in recent competitions, like no matter how confident I am about a workout or anything I'm doing, I get nervous, right? Because it's one of those things. And if you ask any
Yeah,
athlete,
and then you have to pee like 6 times before.
yeah, and if you ask any athlete, like, are they more nervous about a workout that they're not sure how they're going to do, or are they more nervous about a workout that they know they're going to do really well on? They're more nervous about the workout they know they're going to do really well.
Yeah.
Right. So you get those like little bits of pee, like, oh man, I have to pee, but you really don't. But it's just a nervous system gain.
Mhm.
I have the poops.
Right.
Like I'm running that porta potty during competitions like 5 or 6 times before the actual workout kicks in.
Mm-hmm. And that is a lot of the initial ramp up of that.
But I don't get that in
adrenaline
law
response. But then the later response would tend to be, so when you're fleeing from somebody, when you're fleeing from, say, a dragon
Well, yeah.
or a tiger, right?
With the
It'll-
squirts.
Yeah.
Just envisioning this whole.
Boom!
I
You
don't
got
know
to get
if
rid
people-
of that stuff fast, and then you go. So oftentimes people will actually have a inability or a difficulty with stool or passing the stool, or even let's say it this way, what will happen is their ability to actually absorb what they're passing through their stool is reduced. That's probably the better way to describe what happens when you're in a higher state of stress. And that partly makes sense too, whether you have constipation or loose stools. You're just not absorbing it properly.
Yeah, because their homeostasis is all jacked up.
Mm-hmm.
Because when you're in a stress response, everything internally starts to shut down.
Yeah.
To focus on what is the stress, what is the threat.
So your heart races.
Yeah.
Your heart rate
I don't know.
increases.
I've always had a lower heart rate, so I guess I'm kind of the abnormal in these situations, and I've put myself through enough stress in my lifetime experiences that my resting heart rate still stays in the 40s and 50s.
So you're able to maintain a level of calm throughout. Is there a practice that you...
I mean, I'm constantly filled with anxiety, so I don't know.
Okay,
that's
so
my entire life.
Lots of stress, lots of anxiety, but that's life. It's not necessarily the situations that you're engaging in.
I haven't actually looked at what my heart rate is during these scenarios. I'm usually focused on trying not to get killed.
Right. Do you have like an Apple Watch or
I do, but then again, I'm not like... Can you put that knife down? Hold on, I got to check my watch.
I got to check it.
I know you two are about to kill each other, but hold on. Okay, heart rate's good. We're at 96 right now. Hold on. Okay, we're climbing, but we're still in a healthy range. Okay, go back to your chaos.
Don't they have like a face mask that shows you all of those things? Like Iron Man, you have the teet, gives you all the output, critical readings.
Maybe in like Navy SEALs.
No,
or
okay,
overseas.
fine. That's just dreaming now.
I don't know that our local cities and municipalities are spending that much money for law enforcement.
Right.
We have a hard enough time getting a bulletproof vest. So
yeah. Well, yeah, and that's a good point that we have a lot of underfunded actually law enforcement throughout.
Some agencies, it's getting better. We won't name mine, but we have a very loving city that loves our cops.
So what's the deal with the body? Like, what's happening in terms of your overall health when you're dealing with perpetual stress?
So perpetual stress, when cortisol levels raise, which is what they do in a stressful situation, a fight or flight type of situation, you also release sugars, right? So there's a lot of sugars in the blood. And then your liver looks at that and says, hey, we have a lot of sugar in the blood. We might have too many sugars in the blood. And oftentimes people who are in these type of situations are also drinking substances like we talked about before that also have sugars in them. So they're adding more to that.
Mine says 0 sugar.
Well, that's good. I'm glad. Is it sweet? Is there a sweetener? Is it like
I'm assuming.
stevia or...
I'm assuming. I don't know.
Oh, okay.
I don't look at the ingredients.
But it's sweet, right?
Does it have caffeine? Sweet. 333 milligrams.
Nice. Let's do this, right?
And then
to go to bed, I just take, some NyQuil with a little bit of whiskey.
But there is good research behind. Wow. There is research. I'm impressed by what we're learning in this podcast.
I'm just glad that vaping was not the most interesting habit.
Yes.
Oh, dude, you're low level. You're fine.
So,
vaping is a gateway drug. Just careful.
Right?
I don't know.
I don't know either. But that's what people are saying. But they've said that about marijuana too, and they said that about even just cigarettes.
If you're gonna ingest tobacco, be a man and smoke a cigarette or a cigarette.
Let's just end it there.
If you're gonna kill yourself, at least be a man about it.
Go straight to the stuff, huh?
I'm just sitting here thinking about what to say.
Are you sure you want me on this episode? We can count quotes
no,
now.
This is great. This is great. So, man, there's so much to talk about with the body and how it probably manifests in like long-term health. But on the other hand,
would it be better to start with understanding why the body initiates those responses?
Maybe. I mean, we also have to end in 5 minutes, so I don't know.
5 minutes?
Yes.
Wow.
We just talked it through. We're good. That was about 30.
Okay, so if the body gets stressed, bad for health.
Yes.
What can I do? Can I say like, I am ready to meet this challenge and I can overcome it? Or like, what can I do in that moment to not freak out as much?
Well, it's a matter of training yourself through, like Taylor's been through a number of situations as well. As an athlete, you can train yourself for difficult situations, but also going through things that are tough for you to do, right? Or it could even be something as simple as waking up early and hiking a mountain.
I think there's a lot of truth to
something-
that. So we brought up Cobra Kai before, right? And there's a lot of truth, and they tell us this in the academy, and they have us raise our hands. Like, how many of you have been punched in the face, right? And like half the class will raise their hand. And it's like, what they'll often say is, okay, go to a gym and go get punched in the face. Because
Really?
if you watch Cobra Kai in the first season, he walks up and he like lunges at them and they like flinch super hardcore.
Mhm.
What's happening to them is that fight or flight response inside their body. There's high stress, high rows, and they quiver and run and hide. The kids who have been hit in the face before, who actually know how to fight, you can initial at them, and their fight or flight is at a homeostasis. Like, yeah, you're not throwing anything at me that I haven't handled before. I'm fine. I know I can handle this situation. It's what they work on in karate. It's what they work on in fighting and jiu-jitsu, everything. The more you do it, the more you engage in those behaviors that you know you're going to face in your life or possibly could, the easier it is to stay in homeostasis and you don't feel like your life is in danger. Because what's happening is the stress level goes up because the brain is like, oh shit, we could die. We're in a moment, we're here. Because the brain doesn't understand, say you and your wife get in a fight, right? And you start getting high stress or anything high level, your fight or flight kicks in. You want to storm out of the house. You want to stay in the house and fight, whatever it is. That's a fight or flight response. The brain doesn't understand that you're fighting with your wife. The brain thinks back to caveman days, you're running from a predator is what your brain is telling you right now. We either need to fight this predator to save our lives or run away from this predator, this threat, in order to survive. So the more you go through the situations and more you understand how to handle these in the moment, the less likely you are to spike in that.
Which sounds great, but then how do you get yourself in those simulations? Because I feel like even when you wake up, I heard that your cortisol level spikes.
Yeah. Well, it has to in order to initiate everything in your body.
That's what keeps you awake,
Right.
right? Your ability to be able to get up out of bed rather than feeling like, oh, I just can't get out of bed, is cortisol spiking.
And it does the same thing. You'll notice if you have a normal sleep pattern, a normal sleep schedule, you'll notice when it's almost time for bed, your body's starting to push down. Like I told you like earlier, when you're taking in those caffeine spikes, you're doing everything, your body wants to stay in homeostasis, you're forcing it. The body wants to naturally force against that to keep you in homeostasis. So it's always going in this pattern, this rhythm of up, down, up, down, up, down. When we add controlled substances, or at the highest level controlled substance, which is what these people are doing, is they're chasing the upper. They're chasing the upper because they don't want to be in a downer state. They don't want to be in a depressed state. The more you do that, the harder it is to get out of that depressed state, and vice versa, right? That's why people go to alcoholism. They start drinking alcohol. They're forcing themselves. They're always so high. They're always so stressed. They're trying to force themselves to drink alcohol to get against that the body's naturally pushing up against that downer, and now you're in a heightened stress. This is why a lot of cops are alcoholics, or any first responders are alcoholics, because they're constantly trying to push themselves down, but the body is constantly trying to fight up against it to stay in the homeostasis.
So the body's trying to say, don't input artificial stuff into me.
Yes.
Well, yeah, it'll always aim to balance or homeostasis, as Taylor's saying. The body's always attempting to find some level of balance.
But the hardest part about this is you're attempting to find a solution in a 30-minute podcast, and you're not going to help find that solution in 30 minutes. This is like hours of training, hours of understanding what are your significant issues and why. Going to therapy, going to meditation, going to exercise, doing all these things that naturally help your body fight against these situations. Because you look at the average person who's not going to the gym, who's not having a normal sleep schedule, who's not having an outlet to speak about their things, because the brain wants to talk about it. You want to talk about what's going on in your life. Whether it's good, bad, or you have to process, right? And it can't process everything on its own. We're a community-driven species, right? And if we isolate ourselves and we don't take the proper means of helping ourselves, whether that's as simple as going for a walk or a run or talking to a loved one or a professional. Those are the first steps into helping your body get to homeostasis faster and staying in that point longer, which is what you'll see with law enforcement. You brought a law enforcement guy here. We're changing what law enforcement is and how we talk about it. It used to be before, like we'll say 10, 15, 20 years ago, if you had an issue, pardon my French, they'd look at you and they'd stop being a pussy. Get over it.
Right.
You have a job to do. Move on. Don't talk about it. Be a man, right? Now it's like our agencies in these cities are giving free therapy to their law enforcement officers, to their first responders, like, hey, if you need to talk about something, here's a therapist. We have all these outlets. Go talk about it, because we know it's going to affect you in your job. And most importantly, it's going to affect you when you retire to not killing yourselves. Because the average law enforcement officer, 80% of them die within 5 to 10 years after retirement.
So is therapy becoming something that more people are taking advantage of? Is it becoming more accepted in the in the field?
Absolutely.
That's great.
Yeah.
Well, I think that's inspiration to do something. You know, just at the end where you mentioned all the different things that were tribe-oriented, and it's important to talk about things and have an outlet. Where do you get in a place if you're totally shut down and you're isolated? What's your advice on where someone could start? Like, you know, that state where you're like, I know I have to do all these things to get better, and I'm not doing any of it.
Well, it's hard because you feel embarrassed, right? Because it's like, oh, something's wrong with me. It's okay to have something wrong with you. Everyone has something wrong with you. Everyone should have their family, local family local family doctor that you go to for any issue, whether it's like Dr. Dummar in Heber City or you have Dr. Schwartz in Salt Lake City or whatever it is. You need to go to someone who's a professional first, where it's confidential, you clear and cut, they know who you are, they know your body, they know the professional means of getting there. Or even at the simplest level, talking to a close friend or a loved one, like, I have an issue, of someone who's not going to belittle you and make you feel like a little bitch, right? Because if you have friends like that, I'm telling you right now, get rid of them, because they're not there to help you. They're going through their own process right now. That's the biggest step, is just finding someone to talk to and starting with answers there, because the internet's not going to help you. These substances aren't going to help you. These people that have their own issues aren't going to help you. You have to go to someone first who understands the first step. It's what you talk about AA meetings. The first step to recovering from alcoholism, admitting you have a problem. And that's true for everything in life.
A lot of people with big egos, and I have my ego just like we all do. They don't want to admit they're wrong or have a problem.
And sadly, those people aren't going to get help. And those statistics are always going to exist, and people are always going to be that way. But you hope that someone hears something that jives with them, whether it's through these episodes you guys are producing or talking to a friend or even hearing my words of wisdom. That's funny to say. Will hear that and drop their ego and be like, yeah, he's right.
So can we get you on the podcast more often or what?
Yeah, dude. Anytime I'm in town, hit me up. My Twitter handle is... No, I'm just kidding. I don't really use Twitter. Oh, yeah.
You're dropping the album next month? Where can people find you?
Yeah, drop the album next month. Hit me up with Ghost Ride down at the Summit in the Complex in Salt Lake. Be there on Thursday nights. I'm just kidding.
Taylor puts on quite a show, I'll tell you.
I love the attention. I'm not going to lie. That's why I love walking into a room with a badge and like all my like gear. I'm like, yeah, I'm the boss right now. Just kidding. I really just want to help people, because more often or not, you see what people don't understand about law enforcement, and you start to understand, hopefully if you're a decent person, is, yeah, we're going through stress and we're in a high induced environment, but we train constantly to better serve in those situations when we go to help people, because they're in a heightened stress environment. They're going through a crisis of their own. When someone calls 911, it's not a good day. To that person, it's the worst day in their life. Whether we've seen that call 100 times in a day or once a month, it's their worst part of their day. And we have to train ourselves, and we have to get the help we need through therapy, through whatever, blah, blah. We're at that higher percentage of understanding that, because we have to better help those that are going through a crisis. We have to be that therapist. We have to be that parent. We have to be whatever they need in that moment to help de-escalate the situation so that they can get the help they need, which is why a lot of people in law enforcement have that higher stress in their blood, because they're constantly playing 50 different roles on 12 different calls in one day.
And as you mentioned, part of your stress then too is actually being that calm in a stressful situation. If you're going to de-escalate something,
especially
you can't
nowadays,
just pour more stress into it. Right?
Especially nowadays. You mean back in the day before video cameras existed, you hear stories of cops beating the shit out of people, and it's true. It used to happen, but now everything's recorded. I'm not saying that was good.
Right.
Right, but now more than ever, we have to be this angel of professionalism whenever we go somewhere to help talk someone through something, whether how heightened they are. We have to stay at that median, that homeostasis range, to better figure out what's that for our own safety, first of all, and then for their safety and everyone else's safety around.
That's a lot of pressure.
Yeah, well, and taking steps to practice, right?
Yeah.
The amount of practice that you mentioned.
Yeah, I mean, we're going through scenarios, and we have simulation rounds, and we're playing paintball with each other all the time and going through rooms, and we did active shooter training the other day after this Texas shooting that happened in the schools, right? So we're going through the schools, and to us, it feels like we're in heightened stress we're going through, but we have to do those over and over and over, not so we get complacent and it gets easier, but just so that we can be more calm and analyze the situation to better help whoever's going through a crisis.
This has been the most honest, really fascinating look into work of a police officer. No, seriously, thank you.
Yeah.
That's awesome. Final words? Oh, no.
Well, no, and my biggest hope is, we talked earlier, like, what are the numbers for law enforcement? And numbers are down. I always say it's the worst time to be a cop right now. I mean, pay incentives, everything's going up, but a lot of people still hate us. I mean, I'd say it's even in the municipalities that love their cops, it's still 50-50 when you're out in the street of people that love you or hate you. Right? I get a lot of time kids are running up and they want to give me they want the cute little junior ranger badge, and we give them the junior officer badge, and they're so excited and everything. And then you get little kids of the same age who have been brainwashed by parents, and they start yelling cuss words at you, everything. I mean, it's 50-50, and it deters a lot of people from doing this job. The sad part is we need this job. Like, there is 100% job security for the rest of my life if I don't screw up my job being a police officer. I'm never going to get fired. They're never going to disband the police unless the government falls over. I hope people hear this who are thinking about their career or feel like they have a calling to their career, and they're watching media and they're discouraged from doing it, and understanding they hear this, that it's not as bad as it's being put out to be. There's a lot of good out there if you want to get in this career for the right reason.
I just keep hearing running through my brain as you're talking now, not police officer anymore, but peace officer.
We are peace officer.
Right? And that's what you are.
It's community-oriented policing.
And I think when we take that realization that these officers around us in our communities are there for peace, for the establishment of peace, for the de-escalation of violence, de-escalation of stress, right? And
I'm a 27-year-old kid. I'm a kid. I'm a rookie cop. I had to play dad to a 21-year-old who was going through some drug habits and everything. I had to be his dad.
Mm-hmm.
I've never met this kid before. I don't even have kids. I'm not even married. I had to automatically put myself in this role that was so foreign to me. I walked away and talked to my partner. I was like, I don't know how I just did that. I'm not a dad.
Yeah.
And I just got this kid to stop doing drugs, hopefully.
Good for you.
But it's just different roles, right? And it's that community-oriented policing. It's like, cops nowadays are not out there to throw you in jail. If you're doing bad shit, yes, you're going to jail. It's a lot of fun to throw you in jail for those reasons. I love that. But at the end of the day,
justice served.
The less people I can throw in jail, the better I feel.
Sure.
Because the better I feel my community is behaving.
Because you're actually initiating peace.
Yeah, you have kids, right?
Yeah, you want peace.
Do you want to throw them in their bedroom and lock the door?
You want to create peace.
You're like, no, I want you to go out and play with the soccer ball.
Yes, you
go
want
have
harmony.
Fun.
I want them to love life.
Yeah, I want you to do that. I don't want to lock you in your room all week because you're being a turd.
Mm-hmm.
Cops are the same way.
It wears on you, even if people think that I like to feel good when I inflict things on other people, right? That's temporary, and I think if you're honest with yourself, deep down, that doesn't actually feel good.
There are cops like that, unfortunately, and there is evil in the world on all sides, just like any job, right? You're going to have malpractice with doctors. You're going to have all these different peoples in all professions. I think people need to remember that.
Absolutely. All right, Dr. Dummar has patients to see, also here to help folks. And signing off from the Be Well Now podcast, I'm Matt.
And I'm Dr. Dummar.
I'm Taylor.
Namaste.
Namaste.
Namaste day.